Hello everyone. Welcome to Codex Tech Rust Learning video blog. This is my next video blog series. It's two-part series. In the first part, I will cover the Dioxus UI and in general what this app is about. And in the second part of this series, I will go over the Axum and the Web API part of it. As always, I will provide my source code link in the video description as well as the link to one of the YouTube videos that was kind of inspiration to create this series. That actual video is using .NET Blazor, so I use that as a reference, but most of the implementation may not be similar to that one. It's different databases, and overall how the project is built. I will also provide link to um, another YouTube video and also a web link how the Tailwind CSS need to be set up. So those references are about Rust U, but similar thing can be applied to Dioxus. So in this first part, I will go over the Dioxus UI component of this application, this superhero application, and it will be not as detailed or as in-depth implementation as we have for the um, as we had for the To-Do app. So in this series, my goal basically is to have the um, to focus mostly on the backend part. Um, So UI will be sort of minimalistic. The main idea is just to have this WASM map to connect to the backend and try to get API data. For the database part, I will be using the MongoDB. So let's jump into the UI code, and then I'll try to just run the application and just give an overview of the final output as well. So let's open the project. So if we start looking at, let's start with the cargo.toml file. Um, so I guess of course, we have a Dioxus just for the UI. We are using uh, request. So this is the library or crate we are using to communicate from the Dioxus UI to the backend API. I think there were a few other options too, but this seems to be more popular crate, and it just did the job that I needed. So it seems pretty good. So these are the two main crates. Other things are the glue and feature that we are adding, but these are the two main crates that we will need. Next, just quickly look at the package.json file. So we are saying we want the Tailwind CSS. So nothing complicated there. So this tailwind config.js file. So this is required since we are going to use Tailwind in a more proper way. So in my previous video series, I just include the CDN for the Tailwind. That will bring everything in the project. But here, this is based on the reference material that I will provide links to in this video description. So basically, we are trying to set up Tailwind that whatever classes that we use that will be included as part of our project. It is not going to include everything from the Tailwind. And the way to set it up is this line number 3 that we see here. So we are saying that anything that is in the source folder, HTML and Rust file, and also the index.html. So these are the sources that will be used to build that Tailwind CSS file. And just to quickly show how it's going to look like. So we have an input.css. So I will show the command line parameter that we need to run, and that will allow the Tailwind to create this output.css file. So input CSS, we are just saying base component and utilities that we need to include. And the output.css is what it will generate for us. So as soon as we add any new class to any of our elements in the Rust or index.html file, this output.cs file will be updated and that class will be included. So it will take care of like properly including browser specific things, etc. So that is that. And now in the index.html, it is pretty simple. One important thing is this line number 8. So this is how trunk recommends to add links to the CSS. So we are saying data trunk attribute here, and href is the output.css. So output.css that will be generated by the Tailwind. So we are adding it, and I'm still using custom name for the div tag that will contain the WASM app, so main app. Let's jump to the source. So source, again, it's a very simple project. I did not go in length to properly create different layers of the components like we did for the to-do app. So I don't have those atoms and molecules and organisms. I just kept it very simple because main idea or main focus of this one is the interaction between the WASM app and the API, not to like really focus on just the WASM part or the API part in general. So main.rs, we just setting up the Dioxus web launch. So same thing, we just say our custom root name is main app. So load that one and the app component. So now looking at the app component that is in the lib.rs. It's very simple. We have two routes. Uh, one route is for the root and the other one is for the add new superhero. So root will take you to the home and add will take you to the add superhero. So these are the two components in a way that are part of this project. And let's look at the home. So home is pretty simple, nothing major here compared to whatever I covered in the to-do app already. Uh, Minor thing is I'm using useRef in this case here. So useRef and useState, the difference mainly is that useState is recommended for smaller objects or simpler data types, while useRef is suggested for complex objects. That's why I'm using hero service as a reference. Then we have simply we're creating a table, and line number 36 is how we are reading from that use reference uh, service. So hero service.read, it will get the instance out, and then we call the heroes. We get the heroes collection, and then iterate over it. And yeah, we are just building a table here. Uh, let's see. So we have delete button. So delete button, we are on click. We are just uh, making a server call. So we are saying that get the hero service reference again and call the delete on server. So we get the read-only reference in this case because we're not going to make any change. But on line number 74, we call the hero service get a mutable reference. So right, and then we are calling delete superhero. I try to first have only one method that will call the backend API, delete it from the server, and then also update the local copy of Heroes collection. But it wasn't working. Uh, it was giving error about some mutable reference because I have to call it with a mutable reference, but then it makes a remote server call that is an asynchronous, and when it comes back, it was causing some issues. So this was the option I could solve it with, like break it down into two steps. And also important was I cannot just use it directly in the match. I have to declare the variable. So that kind of helped, I think, the Rust compiler to know that I don't need immutable reference anymore, and I can get the mutable reference now. Otherwise, it will complain about that too. I don't know if there is a better way to have one method getting mutable reference and still make the asynchronous API call, but this is how it worked for me. Maybe I will look into it future if I could. handle it with one method, but right now I have two methods. So that is that part, and then we have add superhero button. What we are doing in this one is just call this line number 105, so we get the mutable reference and call the get superhero. So it will be an API call get the data, and then since we are doing write silence, it will not trigger any change over here on the UI for the data, and we are trading that with the refresh UI if the data is successful. And that also avoids the situation where it may get into that recursive loading the data kind of situation. And last one is, yeah, this is just to go back to the home page. Oh, sorry, this is go to the add superhero. So we are using the read service, and on this line number 124, we are saying push route add. So this will take you to the add superhero form. Now let's look at the add superhero. That will be simpler than the other one. So I'm using same useref for first name, last name, etc. I could use use state because simple string, but I just wanted to play around with the useref use case, and that actually helped with if I go on this line number 39 that how useref will work. If I use use state, it was simple. I can just get the in the on change event I can update uh, that use state variable with the new value. But in case of useref, I can get the mutable reference, but I have to call replace range, and I'm saying replace all the contents, that is this dot dot, replace all the contents with the new value. If I was using use state, it was a simpler way. You can just replace the value as we did in the to do web app. So that is, I think that's the main part. Then we have the save button. So in save button, we are calling the backend API. So here on line number 119, we call the add superhero, and we pass this new superhero object. So that's another shortcut that I took in this project. So I did not create like a shared library because this superhero object. So if I go back to this line number 107, so this superhero object, I have this similar object on the API side, and I created this one on the client side as well. I guess in the actual implementation, it would make sense to have some shared library and keep these objects in there, and then we can pass them, or we don't have to declare them again and again. Uh, so there are a few things which were unnecessary, like I don't need this comic objects. It's not of any use in this ID property. But since when I get the values from the server, I get in a certain format, this superhero object matches with that format. So instead of creating, multiple objects, I just kept it as is. But I just wanted to say, like, although I'm hard coding the values here on line number 108 and 112, but it doesn't matter because server side, these values are not received. So when we deserialize this object, uh, there is a similar object on the server side that will have these two missing columns, so it will not translate it back and it will save it properly. So these will be ignored. So this was just a shortcut because I was not trying to be completely correct or follow the best practice. It's just to show the communication or work on the communication between the UI and the API. Uh, what else? So yeah, this is simply just go back to the home screen. So we get the router service and line number 137. We just go back to the home screen. So push route and go back to the home screen. So that is, oh, so this is almost the code. Let's just see the superhero service. So superhero service is where all this code is that communicate between the UI and the backend. So as I said, like I have this comic struct and superhero, I just copied them as is from the API. Ideally, they should be in a separate library or shared project that can be used from both. Uh, then I have this heroes collection in the superhero and comics. I'm not using comics. Really, it could be useful like if I was creating a drop down, but I did not bother to try to make it as functional. I just kept it simple. Then in the superhero service, we have this get superhero. So we are using request to make an API call, get all the superheroes, and once we get them from the server, we are just adding it to the heroes collection. So instead of uh, yeah, so instead of like building it separately, so we get all the self.heroes back here from the server, and then we iterate, and we are creating that hero name and adding it to just a message because it's not needed, of course. I just created it just to show log message. This whole code, this one is not really needed. I just got the collection already. I can just, you know, call it an end, but I wanted to print on the UI in the console log that what are the all heroes hero name that I got it. So that's what I'm doing here. This is not required. Add superhero, making call to the server, send data. So whatever the new hero, as I was saying, was building on the add form, we just pass it to the server, and then I just log the server response. So most of the magic will be happening on the server side, and that was the whole purpose of this video. In case of the delete on server, we just pass the superhero ID, or it could be the ID of the actual object as it is stored in the MongoDB. So I'm calling that one with a delete verb, and then just return the message. And this delete superhero, so that was the difference. So in case of delete on server, I'm getting immutable reference. And in case of delete superhero, this is just deleting it from the local heroes collection. So I just get that ID, and then I iterate on the heroes collection or the vector, and find where this hero is based on the name. So I'm using superhero name, not the first last name or the ID, but the name just for the simplicity. And I just, before I remove it, I print a message on the console log, and then I call swap remove. So this is a method in uh, Rust vector that will remove an object easily. So I don't have to do any crazy thing. You just swap remove method, provide the index, it will remove with the null value or the option value. So if I go up to the definitions, so this is the superhero right here. So that's the add, superhero service. So now if we look at the, yeah, let's look at the command. So to run this thing, the UI part, I have to use npx tailwind CSS. And I'm now, as I was saying, we have to provide the input file. So minus I flag, we provide the input.css, and output will be our output.css. And the watch flag will keep it running in the background. So as soon as you add a new class to any of your Rust file, it will recompile, create a new output file. And then I'm saying trunk to run it on port 8081. So now it is running successfully. For the backend API, we have to just do cargo run, and our backend API is running on the port 8080. So now if I go to the app, so I would just need to hit this one. So this is how the UI will look like. Again, I did not try to make it fancy. Alignment is not, that was not the main focus. So we have the list of superheroes. If I click on the get data from server. Let me open the console log too so we can see it. So let me push it down and I will delete it. Okay, so if I say get data from server, so it shows that call finish Spider-Man and I got one entry. Uh, Before I show add new superhero, let's jump back to uh, the MongoDB instance. So I'm using this MongoDB instance here. So I have two collections comics, simply ID and name. Um, so this is the primary key sort of in Mongo, and the name is in this case DC Comics. So you can have this auto-generated as an object ID, or you can provide your own values. So I just decided to go with this simpler approach. And the other collection is Heroes, which will be referencing this comics collection. So in case of Heroes, I'm using the auto-generated object ID, but comic ID is referencing this other collection. And when we go over the backend API code, at that time I will go over the detail that how we use MongoDB from Rust to make all these queries and get the reference data. So right now we only have one entry here. So if I go back to the UI now and try to um, add a new superhero. So this is the screen. Let's say Kent, Superman, and this is DC, so comic ID. So there is no drop down. If I was if I was building an actual app, I would get all the comics list from the server, show as a drop down so user can select. Anyway, so if I click save, it will make the API call and save the data. So let's do save. So say HTTP call after server, and then server response is that add new superhero is added. And to verify, we can go back to the superhero list. I can click over here. So we see Superman is here. And if I go back to the UI, the MongoDB, let me go back to the MongoDB. And if I show it over there, and I'll just refresh quickly. So we can see that Superman is added here. Clark Kent, Superman, and it's a DC comic. Um, so if I go back to the UI and now if I want to delete superhero, for instance, Clark Kent, uh, I'll click on delete, confirm, and screen auto refreshes, and that one is gone. It says server delete was successful, server response, there was no issue. Uh, and if I go back to the uh, go back to MongoDB and click on refresh, and Superman is gone from here. So adding, deleting, they were working fine. Uh, Although I did not show in this one that how do we get a specific object. Uh, but I will when we go over the API at that time, I will explain that how are we able to get even single object. That is also possible through the API. One thing to mention here, the comic ID is a reference data. So you see MV here. But if I go back to the UI, we are actually showing the name. So we are still using MongoDB lookup to use MV to go to the comic collection and get the name from it and display on the UI. So that will cover whatever I wanted to cover for this UI part of this superhero app. In the next video, we'll go over the Axum and some other thing that need to be done, plus MongoDB that was required to make it functional and make the UI work with the backend properly. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.